inside this case is the best keyboard kit you can get for 95 bucks. For people that haven't been following the NK65 Entry Edition's release, this is one of the most interesting DIY kits to have released in recent memory because what you get is a lot of value for your money. Now, before we get into the details of what makes this keyboard so awesome, let's talk about the hype for a little bit. So far, NovelKeys has done 3 runs of these DIY kits. The first run was for 500 units of the N65 Purple, which sold out instantly. And the second run, there were 2 colorways, 500 units of the purple, that's the run that mine came from, and 500 of the beige version. This run sold out insanely quick as well, with everything showing out of stock, for me at least, within 2 minutes. On the third run, there are 3 colors, Blue Mint, Smoke, and Frost, all released with 1,000 units each, and was much more obtainable, but still sold fairly quickly. That's all great, but sometimes hype is a bad thing, right? It can set expectations so high that you're often left disappointed, but this is not the case with the NK65 Entry Edition. Opening up the package, you're greeted by the NovelKeys carrying case. Yeah, this thing comes with its own case, and it's actually my first. I never had the urge to get one myself, but now that I have one, I actually really appreciate it, especially since I plan on moving pretty soon. Inside the case, you'll find some information about VIA, since this keyboard is QMK and VIA compatible, a cold USB-C cable which can come in different colors depending on the case that you pick, and of course this beautiful polycarbonate keyboard. Again, all of that for $95. I admit at this point, just looking at the keyboard, nothing really stands out as unique, and it kind of looks like any other 65% keyboard. But to get a better idea why this keyboard is so different and amazing for the price, we need to dig a little bit deeper. So let's do that. The color I picked up is this really nostalgic clear purple called N65 Purple that's very reminiscent of classic atomic purple Game Boys, and one of the main reasons why I went with this color, which I'm sure many of you out there can relate with. The texture on this case is perfect. It's matte in a way that gives off a very premium, high quality feel. On the top right, we have a recessed USB-C port, but fortunately there's a decent amount of space around the port for thick connectors. The case is designed to provide an 8-degree typing angle, which many people think is ideal. I found the typing angle along with the height of this keyboard produce a very comfortable typing experience. One drawback of this design is that since it is tailored to a specific typing angle, it isn't adjustable. There are many fixed angle designs like this, and you can make some minor adjustments with rubber feet if you really wanted to. The bottom of the case is flat with these 2 rubber strips that run in parallel pretty much the entire length of the keyboard, making it extremely planted. This thing is not moving unless you want it to. The silhouette of the NK65 is kind of similar to the Tofu, but has a very different presence. It's a bit more angled in certain areas, which gives it an ever so slightly wider flared base. They're both very good looking cases, but in different ways. One thing I did notice with the transparent model is that it does make it easier to see imperfections caused during either manufacturing or assembly. The screw mounts, for example, come up white instead of purple, indicating that the plastic here is strained during either tapping or when the screws are used to tighten the keyboard together. Now, NovelKeys has given a few other examples of acceptable quality standards, so make sure you read through that before you buy so there are no surprises. Now, this is normal when working with a material like polycarb, but if you're very particular about this detail, I would highly recommend sticking with an opaque color. Now, this is where we get to what makes this keyboard design so cool. In a traditional 60% keyboard like this Tofu, you have a base with the standoffs that support the plate and PCB. Since these are rigid mounted points, when you type on the areas around the post, especially this middle one here, the impact energy travels down and spreads throughout the case. If this case is made of aluminum like this one is, you sometimes end up hearing pings resonating through the entire case. A common solution for this is to foam the case at the bottom, and if you're daring, to actually ground down the middle post to allow the PCB flex to absorb some of the energy. The NK65 Entry Edition design is completely different. You actually have 5 components. the top and bottom housing made of injection molded polycarb, a silicone dampening pad, a black coated aluminum plate, and the QMK and VIA compatible PCB. The polycarb case already goes a very long way to get you a better sounding keyboard, but the NK65 Entry does much more than just that. This keyboard features a floating PCB, so unlike the Tofu we looked at earlier, it's not hard mounted to the bottom case, it's attached to the top portion. It's hard to imagine, so let's break this down. The core of this design revolves around the aluminum plate and is configured in a way where the PCB, along with the top and bottom housings, having their own unique mounting points to the plate so they don't secure to each other. The PCB attaches to the plate with 2 screws, one near the shift and one near the enter key. The plate itself is then secured to the top housing via 12 perimeter screws, with the top assembly then secured to the base with 5 screw posts that bypasses the PCB, attaching directly to the plate as well. This results in a floating PCB. Since this PCB is mounted at 2 opposite ends of the alphas with no hard points in the center, the PCB has wiggle room to flex as you type. This makes the typing experience less jarring, so instead of, say, punching a solid wall, you're punching into a mat. Now, one of the issues of having just 2 mounting points is that as you get further and further away from the supports, the flex increases significantly. Well, this is where the silicone pad comes into play. Not only does it fill in the empty space to reduce sound resonating throughout the empty space, it also acts as a buffer for the PCB. Now, before I get ahead of myself, let's talk about how this PCB is actually supported. There's a 2-step support system to prevent the PCB from flexing more than it should. The first are these short, hard plastic standoffs placed throughout the bottom housing. They're rigid, but they still provide a bit of flex. The other are these nubs on the silicone that are stiff enough to dampen the downstrokes, but soft enough to flex. What I noticed though was that the height difference between the nub and the post didn't differ by much, so whatever soft dampening the silicone had provided would kind of be negated by the hard plastic stop. A common mod for 60% keyboard cases is to grind down the center post to allow the PCB to freely flex. This has me curious on whether it would make sense to do it here and just let the silicone be the primary support, but I'm not quite ready to do that experiment yet. Maybe when I add more NK65s to my collection. The PCB on this keyboard was designed by Yankar, who's known for a very smart looking 60% through-hole design called Gingham. This PCB is blacked out except for the 2 logos, is hot swap capable using Kale sockets, has super bright RGB LEDs, and it looks to be the same PCB used in other variants of the NK65, but seems to differ in color. The PCB that comes with the entry editions are black, but replacements are offered in white. Maybe we'll get to the point where we can not only choose the color of our housing, but our PCB as well. Looking at the bare PCB, you may have noticed that the LEDs are located at the bottom instead of the top. And this is because the Entry Edition features south-facing switches to ensure maximum compatibility with cherry profile keycaps like the ones produced by GMK, with the obvious drawback of not having the LEDs directly under the legends for shine-through keycaps. Even though the LEDs are bright, the legends are noticeably dimmer, but this is a trade-off that many enthusiasts, including myself, are more than willing to take. I remember back in 2016 or 17, I was having issues with a couple GMK kits with my Poker 2 and Centrix S65X, where the home row keys felt and sounded slightly different from the rest. I found that other users on Geekhack at the time had run into the same problem and they were calling it interference. The issue is that cherry profile keycaps, typically on the home row, would hit the switch housing, interfering with how the key bottoms out on keyboards with north-facing switches. The obstruction causes a change in feel and sound, exactly what I was seeing with my Poker 2 and S65X. This particular feature is quickly becoming a deal breaker for many enthusiasts and collectors since GMK custom sets have become so prevalent. So if you've been eyeing some sort of GMK set and have that little voice in the back of your head saying, hey, you should probably pick one up, south-facing switches should be a no-brainer for you. Next, the stabs. The stabs on this keyboard not only come pre-lubed from the factory, but these also don't have the typical support feet you see on other MX stabilizers, so clipping these are not necessary. Very nice touch. Now at this point, we've gone pretty long without some sort of sound test, so let's do that now. We're going to set this NK65 up with some stock Kiwi switches and some Super Nintendo looking PBT keycaps to keep the nostalgic vibes going. The RGB LEDs on this keyboard are bright, and at max they actually kind of hurt to look at, but this is a good thing. Even with the south-facing configuration, you still get an okayish illumination with shine-through keycaps. Now there are a bunch of RGB effects that are programmed into the first function layer and assigned to the bottom two alpha rows. From the keyboard, you can cycle through various effects and also adjust the hue, saturation, brightness, and effect speed. If you're not happy with the lighting animations, you can go and create more if you wanted to within QMK, but yeah, it's not gonna be easy. Even in VIA, while it is easier to control, it's not a very robust application in regards to RGB, especially if you're coming from something like Razer Chroma. For example, you can't easily set per key RGB assignments, you don't see your changes reflected in the software, but at least it's easy to set up, and you do have access to all of the commonly used RGB animations. Just don't expect crazy things like light explosions on key presses or something like that. Now, if you don't like where the controls are mapped and want to make more granular adjustments to your keyboard, QMK is an option if that's what you're familiar with and don't mind flashing the keyboard every time you want to make a change. I don't want to make things harder for myself, so I'll be using VIA or VIA. I'm gonna call it VIA. VIA is nice because it just makes life so much easier as it allows dynamic changes to the key mappings with up to 4 programmable layers. You can also create macros, adjust lighting effects, which we touched on earlier, and even has this very convenient key tester, perfect for quick tests when you receive a brand new keyboard. Aside from the key tester, you might say, well, what's the big deal? My $40 keyboard comes with software that can do all of this no problem. Well, that's true, but they also have their fair share of issues as well. Their designs are often not streamlined or intuitive, making them hard to use. It's very likely that the application you're using either only works for that one particular board, or if you're lucky, maybe a couple other keyboards from the same manufacturer. More importantly, those applications are closed source, so you have no way to audit and see exactly what you're installing. VIA, on the other hand, currently supports 259 keyboards, with the majority of them from different manufacturers. The design is clean and straight to the point, with everything laid out exactly where you'd expect them to be. Even small things like saving the keyboard layout results in an easy to read and modify JSON file. All of this is open source with code available for you to access on GitHub as well. So yeah, if you're starting to tip your toes into higher end mechanical keyboards, expect to see more of QMK and VIA. So you've probably caught on at this point that I really like this keyboard, and at $95 for the kit, it is a no-brainer for me. What you get for the money right out of the box and the upgrade potential it brings you just can't be beat. You can start off with a simple budget build with Gator-on yellows and some tie-how keycaps for give or take about $60 on top and be set for a while. Or if you want to down the line, you can ball out and easily transition to higher end switches like these Kiwis, and know that those expensive GMK keycaps will be fully supported when you decide to buy in. The fundamental designs of this keyboard allows it to grow with you, and again, Polycarb at this price, very, very cool. I like the Entry Edition so much that I actually picked up another one. So if you want me to cover the Blue Man colorway in its own video and show off its glow-in-the-dark effect, let me know in the comments. And NovelKeys, if you're watching, please make one to match this extreme green Game Boy. I will be the first in line to buy one. If you want to get one of these Entry Editions for yourself, there was another buy scheduled for November or December if I remember correctly, but due to component shortages, that unfortunately has been delayed. NovelKeys definitely knows that they have a winner on their hands here, and they have been working to improve availability with each run, so I'm hopeful that this kit will become much more accessible soon, because I can definitely see them selling a lot of these keyboards because it is a very good keyboard. I'll put a link down below for the best way to get updates when the next drops will come. Well, that's it for today. Like and subscribe. It really helps me out, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.